Alright, I have already cut the majority of this field with the Caroni finish mower, and you can see it's done what looks like a pretty bad job. Well, there's a reason for that. I'm cutting a bit fast, but you can see what all it's left. And I am cutting a field that is way too thick for a finish mower. If you look at this grass, hopefully you can hear me with the tractor going, I have purposely let it seed out and get extra thick because I want to put some seed on the ground. But it is very, very thick. And this is Tiff 9x, which has got a real tough stalk on it. So I'm asking the finish mower to do a bit much here. Now this is a field that I just like to rough cut, so I don't mind some sprigs sticking up. And the finish mower is quite a bit wider than the flail mower, that's why I tend to use it. But I have left this big strip here that I'm going to mow with the flail mower to show you the cut. And I'm just about willing to guarantee the cut is going to look better with that flail mower, because it's designed to cut thicker stuff, brush, real thick grass, things like that. So again, I know I'm purposely overloading the finish mower. Now with that said, I want to show y'all what we call our yard. It's nowhere near as thick, doesn't have all that thick stemmy grass in there, and I just mowed it yesterday. So I don't want you to write the finish mower off saying it can't do a good job. Now if you look at this is more of yard type grass. Didn't get extremely thick. You can see it done a great job. No stem sticking up, very little windrows. So if you mow your grass often, this is what you can expect with that finish mower. And that's what the majority of people are buying those for. Mowing yards, not necessarily doing heavy duty field mowing like I'm doing. I just happen to use it for a little bit of both. So this will give you an idea. Again, this was all mowed yesterday. And if you can see around those trees, it's how thick it was before I mowed. So this was quite thick as well, but nothing like this old thick field grass that I have here. So I'm gonna run the flail mower, mow the last of this, give you a side-by-side comparison. You'll probably be a bit surprised. That flail mower does cut completely differently than the finish mower. Alright, I just got done mowing that patch, and something that's on my mind that I want to point out. You can see that since I cut with the flail mower, see the stripes? Because this flail mower has a roller on the rear, this is kind of what helps keeps it riding even and keeps everything from scalping. It will stripe your grass. So some people may like that, but you've got to keep in mind now I'm being forced to mow one direction, mow back another, or either mow all the same direction. Otherwise your field looks really weird if you've got a couple, you know, white looking stripes going that way, a couple darks coming back this way. So it does kind of force you to mow in the same pattern, whereas with the finish mower you can mow any which way you want. This is all the finish mower, there is no striping there. Now with that said, I do kind of have dull blades on the flail mower, so you can see this has left a lot sticking up too, just like the finish mower has done, this whole stemmy stuff. But the other big thing about a flail versus the finish mower, it evenly distributes the grass. I don't know if y'all can see that, but it just kind of cuts it, brings it back over, and lays it evenly on the ground. Whereas this finish mower tends to windrow it behind each blade. So that's something else to consider. If the little bit of windrows are going to bother you, now a couple days in the sun, those start to vanish. If windrows bother you, go with the flail. Now again, I'm flying over this field. It's very thick stemmy grass. I got both of them set high, so no, this does not look like a good cut. But again, nobody's going to leave their yard growing as thick as I did. This thing's been growing for over a month. We've just got a lot of rain. But I showed you over there in the yard area, if you mow every couple of weeks, or even more often than that, like most people do a yard, either the flail or the finish mower leaves it looking very good. I mean, there's nothing sticking up over there. It looks like almost looks comparable to like a zero turn mowed it, but there are a few windrows out there, and again, it's not going to cut quite as well as a zero turn because neither of these provide a lot of lift. And that's where you're seeing all this sticking up. You see the tire tracks here? That's something you have to consider when mowing with a tractor. They're so heavy, they lay that grass down, and then by the time you're over it, it didn't get cut, and it slowly stands back up. So that's why it leaves this field looking pretty rough cut. Now, again, like over there in our, what I call our yard, since I didn't let that grass get very tall, there's not a whole lot of grass to mash down with the tractor tires. That's why you don't see all that junk sticking back up over there. So that over there is mowed with the tractor, looks great. This is mowed with the tractor, doesn't look so good. It's all in how often you mow your grass and what type of grass as well. All right, let's talk about some of the pros and cons, and hopefully this lighting isn't too bright here. It is extremely bright today. While I still have this lifted up, I want to show you the underneath, because I'm sure some of y'all are interested in that. Again, it's got this big roller on the rear. It kind of helps keep everything balanced out, keeps you from scalping. Yes, you can still absolutely scalp with this, depending on if you have some high spots in the middle that you're coming to. But here's a quick look underneath. Sorry that it's dirty. Hopefully y'all can see that. I've still got more cutting to do, so I'm not going to wash all this out. Here's what the blades look like. They are single blades, little Y blades, and they have a cut inside front and rear so you can flip them. Now let's talk some pros and cons. This is definitely one of the big cons. I think there's 26 sets of blades, so you have 52 blades in here versus 5 blades, regular mower style blades here. So when it comes time to sharpen your blades, you have a lot more work to do here than you do on that finish mower. Now I probably sharpen my blades, I guess, once to twice a year. I actually leave these blades a little more rounded off and dull, which is what you want to do if you're rough cutting. Obviously your mower blades, every few times I mow, and again I'm mowing 15 acres here, so they mow a lot, I'll sharpen them up. One other thing I want to mention, what's on my mind, kind of a con for the flail mower, if you mow a lot of really thick stringy grass like I mowed in that field, some really thick brush, because this runs on skids, every now and then it will bunch up and get caught in front of the skid, and before you know it, you've done dug a trench out there, so you have to lift it up to get that out from underneath. That doesn't happen often, but something I want to mention. You don't have that at all with wheels on a finish mower. Now if you're mowing just strictly grass in the yard, you're probably never going to have a problem with that. Speaking of these skids, that is how you adjust the height on this Caroni finish or flail mower. So you just take these bolts out, lower your skid up and down to get your cutting height. That does take longer than the cutting height adjustment on the finish mower. Again, you just pop these clips out and you got these different size spacers that you move top to bottom to raise or lower the deck. I guess you could say that's a con, but honestly, once you get either of these set to the height that you want, that really is non-existent. You can see the size difference. I can't remember the exact cut of this, 71 or 73 inches. This one claims 91 to 93 inches depending on where you look, but if you've watched my other video, this was only cutting like 87 to 88 inches, so was not getting the advertised cut on that. But there is a difference. This is definitely cutting a much wider path than this one, which brings me to a next point to bring up. The flail mower, without a doubt, seems easier on a tractor than the finish mower. And don't get me wrong, I hardly know the finish mowers back there, but I'm running a 66 horse John Deere. I used to mow with a 44 horse John Deere, and I also mowed with a 6-foot rotary cutter, a John Deere brand. I think it was called Frontier. I could tell without a doubt that the rotary cutter was behind me. When I got into thick grass, it bogged my tractor down a lot, which was surprising for 44 horse. That's what made me purchase the Flail several years ago. On my 44 horse tractor, it was night and day difference. This was so much easier on the tractor than the bush hog type mower. So that's something to consider. I guess I'm doing a third comparison here as well. Let's see some more pros and cons. Obviously, a big pro to the flail mower is this is strictly grass only. The flail, which you're about to see me do as soon as I get done talking here, I'm gonna go start cutting some briars and brush and thick, nasty mess down. So this is a dual purpose mower. Kind of the same way with the rotary cutter too. It can mow grass, doesn't do a great job. Obviously, rotary cutter's designed for heavier brush cutting, but this can do both. I don't recommend cutting very large material with this. It says it's rated up to 2 inches. I'm not cutting 2-inch material with it. About 1.5 inches is kind of where I like to stop. Those are just small blades and they're not carrying a lot of mass and momentum. I just don't really feel like you should be cutting very thick, large branches with that. That's where you kind of need a rotary cutter. The pro over here on the Caroni versus the Flail, this may not seem like a lot, but this is very, very important to me. Wheels. Whenever I get to the end of every row, or I'm whipping around my pine trees here or something else in the yard, you have to lift this up. Some people may say you don't, and you don't, but every now and then those skids are going to catch. They're going to tear your turf out, tear your lawn out. You do not have that problem with the wheels. I'm hardly ever lifting this up. When I get to the end of the row, you just spin around, they pivot, you go. So that's a lot less work on your tractor hydraulics, up and down, a lot less work and focus on the operator. Again, with this, I'm constantly lifting it up at the end of each row. Like I said, the majority of the time it will not dig in, but when it does, then you're left with ugly scars in your yard. So keep that in mind with skids versus wheels. We already talked about the blades. That's a big pro here. Again, I only sharpen these a couple times a year, so it's not the end of the world, but you're looking at an hour-plus job taking all these blades out and then trying to put a little sharp edge on them. And again, I kind of leave those rounded off like you would a rotary cutter blade, because I do more rough cutting with this than I do grass cutting. They both have similar gearboxes, shafts, that's no problem there. This has a floating link design. You can either solid mount the top link here on this one, or you can put it where it floats. I tend to leave it solid, and the reason I do that is I like to put a little bit more weight on the back of my skid than I do the front. You see it's kind of leaned back like that right now. That helps the grass that I've previously cut go underneath that skid and keep from bunching up on me. I would say the big wide finish mower is easier to scalp your lawn than the flail mower. And that's because these little wheels can fall in a hole, plus the wider you go, the easier it is to scalp. You can scalp with the flail, no doubt, but this big rear roller does kind of make up some of the difference if a skid falls in something. So that's probably a pro to the flail there, a little less likely to scalp. They both have very minor grease fittings. I'd say about the same. There's just a few grease fittings on the roller and some of the bearings here. No big difference there. Price, they're pretty similar. Probably a big pro to a rotary cutter, since I'll talk about that, since I used to run one of those as well. Keep in mind, this is a pro and con for these. These are both compact, which is great. That's one thing I hated about a big old rotary cutter. It stuck way out the backside of the tractor, and when I turned around in tight places, it was just a nightmare. It felt like it stuck out 8 feet behind me. Not to mention that also took up a lot more room in my building. So I really do like the compact size of both these mowers, but that's also a negative to these. If you have a lot of low-hanging limbs, that was where the rotary mower was great. You could back way up underneath the limbs before you had your tractor glass all hung up in the limbs, or if it's open station, you know, before you had yourself caught all up in there. So sometimes a big advantage of a rotary mower is it can back up underneath low-hanging limbs. These don't do that very well. That's probably also a con to the flail mower. Does not cut very well at all backing up. And keep in mind, if you back over stuff, that roller tends to smush it down, so it may not cut it very well. This does better on backing up and cutting. A big positive to the flail, this mount right here is adjustable. You can either move it over here or here to offset the mower, and I have mine at maximum offset. That is great for mowing next to fence lines or trees. It gets way out further than even this wide finish mower, and that's another big pro of this over a rotary cutter. Most people, your tractor only has enough horsepower to run a rotary cutter that's about the width of your tires. Very hard to mow up next to a fence or next to a building. The fact that you can offset this flail is probably one of its biggest pros, I would say. When I'm mowing down the side of a ditch, like I said, fence, buildings, trees, going around things, it's so nice to have that offset. It's easy to see from the tractor. I'm not running my tires up or tractor into the fence. So that's a big positive that not many people talk about with these. They also offer a hydraulic top link for this if you have a rear hookup, so you can hydraulically move this mower in and out. I just have mine on the manual settings right now. Again, I really like it offset. Plus, that it mows inside of this tire, so that's one less tire compacting the grass down in the field. Probably another positive, again, to a rotary cutter, even though I don't have one here now, is the size material it can cut. But again, at least in my experience, that was the hardest on my tractor of anything that I've owned, especially my less powerful tractor. Thick grass would just bog that mower down. I would say the flail's the easiest on the tractor. Finish mower's not far behind it. You can get away with running very low horsepower tractor on this, and then the rotary cutter to be the last thing. So you've just got to kind of make your mind up what you're going to use it for. If you want to do some light brush cutting as well as mow grass, go with the flail. If you want to do grass only, I say absolutely go with the finish mower. And if you're going to do heavy brush cutting, rotary cutter is definitely where you need to be. They both run, let's see, this runs with 2 belts. This uses a 3-belt design in here, and if you don't have them properly tensioned, you will burn your belts up. I learned that the hard way the first few times running these mowers, but now that I've kind of got the proper tension figured out, I've had these belts on there for well over a year, and they haven't given me any problem. Trying to think of anything else offhand worth mentioning. You know, they both cut grass very well if it's properly maintained, not thick field grass. You can see I just mowed this yard right here. It looks good, not quite as good as a zero turn. So again, if you're trying to replace a zero turn with anything I'm mentioning, you're probably going to be a bit disappointed, but this does very well. They both do very well on grass. If you're going to be spinning around a lot in the yard, go with the wheels. If you want dual purpose cutting, go with the flail. And again, heavy brush cutting, go with the rotary cutter. I think that's probably the end of me comparing them side by side. You know, the other thing to keep in mind is this does kind of throw windrows behind each blade. This evenly distributes the grass if that matters to you. I'm about to go do a little bit of heavy brush cutting. I'm gonna bring y'all along. Well, I say some light duty brush cutting just to show you what the flail will do. In case you're interested in one of those for some brush cutting as well. I've got a little bit of land to clear. Again, don't use that at all. The blades are just too lightweight and you'll burn those belts up. All right, here's one example. Hopefully you can hear me with this tractor. All this junk growing up along this old fence right here. So this is where having that flail offset is a big advantage over a rotary cutter. So I'm gonna go down along this fence line here, nothing major in there. But you know, some of this stuff 3+ foot tall, and I'm gonna trim up somewhat next to the fence. I'm not gonna get all the way to there because I don't want to wind up wrapping no barbed wire up in this. But this is just an example of having that offset on the flail. I love that part of it. get out and show y'all this because that's pretty impressive to me. That's another thing I really forgot to mention about this. You've seen what I was just cutting. I mean, there's saplings in here. Some of them, I mean, you can see that base right there was probably 1.5 inches thick. It cut it off. That's about as thick as I like cutting with that. But it pulverizes. It pulverizes so well. Literally back in here twice because I just wasn't sure what I was in here. I didn't want to hit nothing, you know, some old farm parts or anything. But literally back in, one pass out, and this stuff is pulverized. Looks good. Looks really good. And you can look at how thick and nasty this stuff is. Bunch of saplings, horrible amount of vines, and now you're left with something easy to work with. I don't remember a rotary cutter doing that good with one pass on how well this pulverizes. That's probably going to be some of the thickest stuff I'll cut today, but just want to give you an idea what this will do. This stuff's been growing up here for quite a while. So small saplings, thick vines, thick brush, literally one pass, maybe two passes, it's pulverized down to nothing.